President.
Senator from Alaska.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at 3:45 today there be 15 minutes of debate remaining on H.J. Res. 44, equally divided in the usual form.
Without objection.
And Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship be discharged from further consideration of S. 416 and the bill be referred to the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are coming to the end of debate on the disapproval resolution for the BLM Planning 2.0. And I'd like to take just a few minutes in wrap-up on this to highlight the very broad support that it has drawn both here on Capitol Hill, but really across the country. Here in the Senate, I mentioned earlier, there's a total of 17 members who have joined me in sponsoring our version of this resolution. That's nearly a fifth of this chamber. It includes every Republican from a western state with BLM lands within its borders. These are Alaska, Arizona, Idaho, Nebraska, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Nevada, Montana, even Kentucky, and the occupant of the chair here, North Dakota, Oklahoma. So again, a very strong contingent of members that are in support of this disapproval resolution. Across the Capitol, the House of Representatives passed this resolution with bipartisan support a couple weeks ago through the leadership of Representative Cheney of Wyoming. This resolution wound up with 234 votes in the House. That's pretty strong. The reason why so many members of the House and the Senate want to overturn BLM's Planning 2.0 rule is pretty simple. We know what it means for our western states. We don't like the impacts that it will have, and neither do a wide variety of elected officials and stakeholders back home. In my state of Alaska, I've heard from the Alaska Municipal League, the Alaska Farm Bureau, the Associated General Contractors of Alaska. The Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce wrote to ask us to overturn the rule. The Alaska Chamber of Commerce wrote in support of our resolution because they said BLM's planning process has grown to be substantially lengthier, more confusing, and burdensome for stakeholders to engage in. We've heard from our leaders in the state legislature, State Senator Pete Kelly and John Coghill, who've asked for the rule to be nullified. So have several of our Alaska Native corporations, including Siri, Ugulnik, and Chilista. The Alaska chapter of the Safari Club opposes it because its landscape-level approach to land management planning has the potential to withdraw and lock up even more land in Alaska. Alaska's energy, mineral, and timber producers are united in their opposition to the rule and their support of our disapproval resolution. We've heard from the Resource Development Council, the Alaska Oil and Gas Association, the Alaska Forest Association, the Council of Alaska Producers, the Alaska Support Industry Alliance, the 40 Mile Mining District, and the Alaska Miners Association all oppose BLM's Planning 2.0 rule because it reduces economic opportunities for Alaskans, those who actually live near these BLM lands, who know the most about them, and who depend on them to provide for their families. And it's the same story in many other western states, from Arizona and New Mexico to Washington and Oregon, Montana, and South Dakota. This rule affects all 12 BLM states, and those states just are not happy about it. We've heard from about 80 groups so far that oppose that rule, and I will ask that a copy of the list of supporters be included as part of the record. And that list includes our nation's energy and mineral producers, the people who keep our lights on, who provide the fuel for our vehicles, who make the construction of everything from semiconductors to skyscrapers possible. This is the American Petroleum Institute, the Independent Petroleum Association of America, the Western Energy Alliance, the National Mining Association, the American Exploration and Mining Association, all opposed to the rule. And so many state groups like the Arizona Mining Association, the Montana Electric Cooperatives, and the Petroleum Association of Wyoming. Joining them are many of our nation's farmers and ranchers, the individuals who provide so much of our nation's food supply, whether that's steak or whether that's milk or something else. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association, the American Sheep Industry Association have registered their opposition. The American Farm Bureau Federation opposes the rule, and so do many of the state partners, including the Colorado Farm Bureau, New Mexico Farm and Livestock Bureau, the Oregon Farm Bureau, and the Washington Farm Bureau Federation. But perhaps most critically, the BLM 2.0 rule has drawn strong opposition from local and state governments, the entities who are elected to represent all of the people, not just one specific interest. The National Association of Counties, the voice of county governments all across the country, sent a letter outlining their support for the disapproval resolution being debated here today. Another group, the National Association of Conservation Districts, wrote that Planning 2.0 should be repealed because it, quote, skirts the Federal Land Policy and Management Act and reduces the ability of local government involvement while seeming forced and blind to the many issues raised in the public comment period. Again, this disapproval resolution has drawn strong support from a wide range of stakeholder groups: energy, mining, grazing, America's farmers and ranchers, state officials, local counties, conservation districts, everything from the Alaska Truckers Association, the Public Lands Council, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce have all weighed in. At last count, more than 80 groups have asked us to repeal BLM's Planning 2.0, and I'm sure that there's many others who are not included in that count. We've heard such strong support because this is a misguided rule that will negatively impact our western states. It subverts the special status relationship between the federal government and states and local governments. It limits local involvement and local input. It opens the door for decision-making authority to be centralized at BLM's headquarters here in Washington, D.C., and it upends BLM's multiple-use mission by allowing the agency to pick and choose among preferred uses while sidelining industries that provide good-paying jobs in our western communities. I think there's broad agreement that Planning 2.0 should be overturned. That's what we are here to do, and we'll have that opportunity in just a few moments. So I would ask all members of the Senate, including those who do not have BLM lands in their states, to consider the strong support this resolution of disapproval has drawn and to join us in passing it at 4 o'clock. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.